Hello friends, good evening. Welcome to PDF for Exams YouTube channel. This is day 39. We are studying environment, and in this video we will be learning about climate change. Although we have already studied about climate in geography, we have seen what a climate is, how climate changes, what are factors responsible, and how does the climate change affects. But here we will try to study climate change with respect to environment. Okay, so let's see what are the topics that we are going to cover in this video. So as I said, we will be dealing with climate change in this video, and due to climate change, global warming arises, and we'll also study about the effect of global warming, and there are certain efforts which are taken to reduce the impact of global warming, or you can say ultimately the climate change. Fine. So to know climate change, what a climate change is, we should know what is climate. And to know climate, we have to know certain concepts. So there were three concepts which we have studied in geography. The first was weather, second was season, and third concept was climate. So once you understand these three concepts, you will be able to understand what a climate is and how it changes and when it changes and what are its impact. So starting with weather, what is weather? So generally you most have often heard that today the weather or the environment is sunny. So everything, this weather, season and climate, this is considered with respect to environment. And what is environment? Everything around us is called as environment. So the condition of environment is considered as weather, season and climate. For example, today there is no cloud. If the sky is clean and it is very sunny and temperature is high, so you can say today is hot weather. Or when there is some cloudy or rain is falling or there is precipitation, you can say today is rainy weather or today is raining. Or it is cold, the temperature is cold, you can say that condition as cold. And when the same type of weather, it lasts to few months. For example, in this same weather, it lasts to 3 to 4 months. So that would be called as season. Okay, so as we know, we have summer season in India, we have winter season. Along with this, we have rainy season, we have spring season, autumn season. So we have lots of season, but majorly we have summer, winter and rainy season, and these seasons last along 3 to 4 months. For example, we have summer starting from April to July. After that, rainy season starts, and then winter season starts. And then when this winter, when the time period of this winter, for example, if we consider winter in a certain period, like as I said, this is summer season, let us consider this as a rainy season, and this is winter season. So there is a particular pattern. For example, in 1 year, if we consider 2020, this year, if summer season, or else you can consider last year for understanding. For example, if the summer season starts from the month of April and it lasts till July, and from August to September we can say, or October, the rainy season continues, and from October till January or February or March you can say it is winter season. So when this pattern, this keeps on going or it keeps on repeating to certain number of years, so that would be called as climate. That means we have certain climatic condition in one area. So if we have taken example of India, so this climate, this season, variation of the season as per month will continue for at least for 30 to 32 years. So this is the minimum time which is used, or you can say which is climate takes to change itself. So after 30 to 32 years, climate changes. And what actually climate changes? So actually the weather pattern or the belt changes. For example, we have studied in geography. So this is a very geographical concept, although we don't need to understand much over here, but still you should know about these things. That's why you can understand this climate change very easily. So we already know that Earth has certain latitudes like equator, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and we have the polar latitude. So there is certain belts regarding these climate. So when this belt shift, for example, this is a belt of summer season. That means during this period the sun would be emitting a light over here at maximum. And when this belt shifted from one position to another position, the climate changes. Okay, so this is all about climate change and how the climate change. Now we learn the definition of climate change. So United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this is an international organization. It defines climate change as change of climate, addition to natural climate variability, change in climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of global atmosphere, and which in addition to natural climate variability observe over comparable time periods. As I said, time period is important over here because we need to compare that after 30 to 32 years what is the change. If there will be certain change, that means now the climate has been changed. So we need to compare with a particular time period, and there should be change in atmosphere. How what kind of changes would be there? The temperature might increase in atmosphere, the pressure might reduce or increase, the density of air. So there are n number of factors which changes in environment or atmosphere, because of what we tend to say that climate has changed. Fine. And we talk about the major characteristic of climate change. So it generally includes the average global temperature. What is global temperature? Temperature we already know, the increase in heat intensity, or you can say the receiving amount of heat. So if the global temperature reduces or increases, that would be a characteristic of climate change. Ice cap melting. How does ice cap melt? So if the temperature of Earth's surface increases, so obviously ice will melt. And what are these ice caps? So ice caps are nothing but the cover of ice over the mountains are called as ice caps. Next is changes in precipitation. So precipitation means rainfall or snowfall. Both are considered as precipitation. So there are certain periods we don't receive rainfall throughout the year. There are certain months like rainy season, and sometime in winter also we receive few rainfall and snowfall in hilly areas. So whenever there is change in this duration of precipitation or the amount of precipitation, either rainfall or snowfall, that also would be a characteristic of climate change. Fine. So this we've understood what are the climate changes. Now we look after the factors which are affecting the climate change. That means what are the important factors due to which climate changes. So there are many factors. It can be natural or it can be man-made also. So the very first most that factor is greenhouse gases. When the greenhouse gases increases, it causes to change in temperature, or you can say increase in temperature of the Earth's surface. And next is aerosol or volcanic eruption. So these aerosol or volcanic eruption tends to reduce the temperature. How do they reduce the temperature, and how does greenhouse gases increases the temperature? So I'll let you know how. So what are greenhouse gases? So there are certain gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, ethane. So lots of greenhouse gases are there. Whenever these gases would be present in atmosphere, and we have already studied about the heat budget in geography. If you know about it, well and good. If you don't know, please go and watch the video of geography to know what a heat budget is. But in heat budget, we have seen that solar radiation, there are certain solar radiation, that means the sunlight coming from sun. So when it reaches the Earth's surface, so for example, this is sun and this is surface of Earth, and lots of particles are present in atmosphere. So when this sun rays reaches the Earth's surface, some part of the sun rays or sunlight is absorbed, or heat is absorbed, and some part are reflected back in air, and some of these sunlight or energy is absorbed by these dust particles or the particles present in the air. So whether it might be the gases, so there are certain gases which absorb this heat, and when they absorb this heat, there is ultimately increase in temperature. Whereas in another case, aerosol, and due to volcanic eruption, there are certain gases which are emitted in atmosphere like sulfur, nitrogen. So many gases are emitted in atmosphere due to volcanic eruption. Now what do these particles, dust particles or aerosol do? They just tend to not allow the sunlight to reach the Earth's surface. That means they restrict the amount of or intensity of the sunlight reaching the Earth's surface, because of which ultimately the temperature might decrease. Fine. So these are the factor, and next factor is concentration of gases in atmosphere. Again, as I said, the greenhouse gases. So these concentration means the amount of gases present in atmosphere. So as much as gases, the greenhouse gases would be present in atmosphere, the temperature will increase in that ratio. So this is what we mean by concentration. To understand better over here, it is given that there are 420 parts of carbon per million. What means per million? ppm. This is an unit for measuring particles or dust particles in atmosphere. So parts per million means we have 420 parts per million of the atmosphere, or you can say the total gas present in air. Fine. So this tends to explain about the concentration of gases in atmosphere. Next is lifespan of gas atmosphere. How this is relevant? This is relevant because more longer the greenhouse gases, or whatever the gases are responsible for absorbing or not absorbing the sunlight, it will tend to change in climate change. For example, if carbon dioxide, we take example of carbon dioxide, is given over here that carbon dioxides tend to stay in atmosphere for almost 50 to 200 years. So if we stop emitting carbon dioxide in atmosphere from now onwards, or we reduce the emission of carbon dioxide in atmosphere, so the carbon dioxide which is already present in air will be there for 50 to 200 years. Now when this will be 50 to 200 years, what it will do, it will absorb the sunlight. But when after 200 years, what will happen? After 200 years, and at present scenario, what we are doing, we are reducing the amount of carbon dioxide emission in atmosphere. When we have reduced this amount of atmosphere, so there would be less concentration of this carbon dioxide in atmosphere. there were many more gases apart from this carbon dioxide, like nitrous oxide, fluorinated gas, and much more. But still, the control over these emission would ultimately lead to alter the climate change. Okay, and next is global warming, potential of a gases. So there are certain gases which are responsible for global warming, or you can say the average increase of temperature of Earth's surface is called as global warming. So these were the major factors which are responsible for changing climate change. Which are responsible for climate change. Now, next concept which we are going to study is global warming. Global warming is very normal concept, and you have been studying this global warming concept right from your childhood classes in science or in environment. You might be aware, very much aware of this, but still let us go through it quickly, what it actually means and how does it happen and what are factors responsible for global warming. So over here the definition is given that global warming is an average increase in temperature of atmosphere near the Earth's surface and troposphere. Now see why we are always talking about the Earth's surface, not in atmosphere. All the layers of atmosphere, there are certain layers of atmosphere like troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, exosphere, but troposphere is the nearest layer of atmosphere on the Earth's surface. We are always talking about the Earth's surface because what happens whenever the sun rays strikes the Earth's surface, the heat energy get absorbed, and because this is a land is a solid object and it's not movable. Although it is movable, the plates are moving, but it's not moving at very fast rate, whereas air, this is continuously moving. So this land get heated up quickly, and because of this only there is increase in temperature on the either surface of Earth, and due to increase in temperature of the surface of Earth, there is increase in temperature of the atmosphere around or surrounding that surface. Fine. So that's why we always talk about the Earth's surface temperature. Next, the causes. There could be both causes, natural as well as human induced. Okay. Now we talk about the impact of global warming. So there are very dangerous impact like rise in sea level. How does this sea level rises? So it's very simple. As much as heat energy would be there on the surface of Earth, the ice caps or the glaciers will start melting, and when they start melting, they will tend to flow in the form of river, and rivers, they ultimately drain in oceans. Like there are certain rivers which drain in Bay of Bengal. If we take example of India, there are certain rivers from Deccan area which drain in Arabian Sea. So when these river water will drain in ocean, there would be ultimately rise in sea level, and due to this rise in sea level, what will happen, the coastal life, the people living in coastal area would be affected. They have to move from their habitat to the places. Even the aquatic habitat would be affected, and there would be decrease or increase in concentration of the salt and mineral in the ocean. Fine. Next is change in rainfall pattern, again due to global warming. Now we can see ourselves earlier what used to happen, how the temperature were, how the seasons used to happen. We had long winters when we were kids. You can take your own example and observe how climate has changed since our childhood. When we were kids, we could observe that we had long winters, there were good rainfall, amount of rainfall was heavy, and summer was not too chilling. But now you can see there is extreme conditions are rising, although at certain places it's still okay. And even at Bangalore, if you know about Bangalore, in India this has moderate climate or moderate temperature or moderate season, but now this place is also becoming hotter as compared to earlier. Okay. And there are certain other reasons or impact, you can say, like heat wave, flooding, hurricanes, melting of ice cap, I've already talked about, melting of glaciers, we've already seen, bleaching of coral reef, loss of plankton due to warming of seas. So these are the impact of global warming. Now learning about the gases that contribute to greenhouse effect. Now see, greenhouse gas, these greenhouse gas are always not negative. Okay, we should not consider it as always as negative, which is major cause of global warming. Although this is very useful, these gases are very useful for plantation or vegetation in colder places. So what happened? Actually, this greenhouse gas concept arises from those places which are colder, and since they were colder, the plantation or vegetation or agriculture could not be practiced in those regions. So what was done in those regions? A covering was done, a covering of transparent layer was done, through which sunlight could enter, and when the sunlight entered and struck the Earth's surface, it could not go or move out this layer, because of which what happened, the temperature in this area was more as compared to the temperature in the outer area, and agriculture or whatever the plants could be grown over here easily. Fine. So that was the main reason behind this greenhouse gases. But naturally what happens, the places where we don't need greenhouse gases, over there if there is increase in greenhouse gases, ultimately it will lead to increase in temperature, and that will cause to global warming, and we have already seen the impact of global warming. Okay. Next, what are the gases, or which gases trap these greenhouse gases? So those are carbon dioxide, which we have already seen. And how does this carbon dioxide reach in atmosphere? So there are a number of ways, like we as human also, we emit carbon dioxide after breathing. Animals, all animals after breathing, they emit carbon dioxide. There are certain burning, when we burn fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, oils, they also emit carbon dioxide. Apart from this, we have methane. These methane are produced due to transport of coal, natural gas and oil mine. We have nitrous oxide, fluorinated gas. So these gases are responsible for or which they contribute the greenhouse effect, and we have already seen what is greenhouse effect and which leads to global warming, that is average increase on the temperature of the earth's surface. Okay, and the next concept is how long they stay in atmosphere. So we have already seen in upper section of the video that there are certain number of years, like carbon dioxide tends to stay in atmosphere for around 50 to 200 years, and nitrous oxide lifespan is around 120 years, and fluorinated gas, they stay on or in atmosphere more than 1000 years. So this lifespan of gases are a very important factor which are responsible for greenhouse gases, or which traps the sunlight coming from sun. Okay, now next concept is non-greenhouse gases and aerosols. So it's not only greenhouse gases which are responsible for increase in temperature, but there are certain other components like non-greenhouse gases and aerosol which are responsible for climate change in atmosphere, like black carbon. So we have only seen carbon till now. So there are certain type of carbon also, like black carbon, brown carbon, blue carbon. So many type of carbons are also there. So when these carbons are present in atmosphere, they tend to reduce in temperature, or when aerosol are present in atmosphere, they tend to reduce in temperature. Why? Because for example, if lots of aerosol are present in atmosphere, if this is atmosphere and sun rays are coming, so these dust particle or aerosol will not allow the sunlight to reach the earth's surface. Although some light will reach, but almost few, or you can say few percent of sunlight won't be able to reach the earth's surface. That will tend to reduce the temperature of the earth's surface. Now talking about the different kind of carbon, like black carbon. So this fine particulate matter is size of around 2.5 micrometer. Micrometer is a unit, we already, we need to discuss much about it. So this is the purest form of carbon and originates from incomplete combustion of fossil fuels, coal, biofuel, biomass, woods and rubber. That means whenever you burn on coal and it is incompletely burned, then it will lead to emit black carbon in atmosphere. Whereas if you completely burn, so it will just, ashes will remain after burning of carbon or biofuel or biomass. Next is brown carbon. So brown carbon comes along with this black carbon. It's not present uniquely. So these are the smoke released by the combustion of organic matter. What are organic matter? Like plant. When you burn plant, so black carbon emits in the atmosphere. So there are certain sources of black carbon. What are they? Like breakdown of biomass burning, tar material, smoldering, coal combustion, combustion of fossil fuel, mixture of organic compound emitted from soil, formed in atmosphere from reaction of biogenic organic gases, and these are the sources of brown carbon. The next is blue carbon. Blue carbons. Now what are blue on atmosphere or the earth's surface? So water is blue in color. Actually it tends to be blue in color because our sky is blue. So we are not going to in that concepts. We'll learn these concepts in science and tech when we'll study those chapters. But here we know water is blue in color. Actually it is not blue, but it tends to look blue in color. So the carbon released from water bodies would be called as blue carbon. Next is green carbon. So green carbon are the carbon which are absorbed by the terrestrial plants for their photosynthesis process to produce their food and oxygen for us. Okay, so these are the carbon or green carbon. Next is radioactive forcing and global warming. So how this radioactive tends to increase or are the main cause for global warming. Okay, so let's see this. So first we need to know what is net radiation, and before that you need to know what is radiation. So radiation actually is a mode of transfer of energy. So there are three modes of transfer. One is convection, conduction and radiation. So these are three different modes of transfer of energy. If we talk about the conduction, so in conduction energy transfers from molecule to molecule. So this is very basic concept, you must be knowing, but still I am revising you for you. So if for example there is some hard material and you heat from one end, so heat will transfer from one place to another, to the other end through the molecules. Next is convection. So convection occurs in liquid body. So if you take a tumbler and start heating over here, the hot water will move up and the colder water will move down. So this is due to convection form of energy transfer. And finally we have radiation. Radiation, the specific point about radiation is that radiation does not need any kind of medium for transfer of energy. How we can understand this? We know sunlight is coming from atmosphere, and in space we don't have any medium, but still sunlight reaches earth's surface. So by this you can understand that radiation does not need any kind of medium to transfer. So now we know the modes of energy transfer. Now what is net radiation? So in this case, net radiation would be the solar radiation absorbed by earth's atmosphere system and the long or else you can simply understand the radiation which is striking the Earth's surface and moving out the Earth's surface. So difference between this radiation would be called as net radiation. Okay. Now what is this radioactive forcing? So the change in this net radiation, how this change net radiation is caused? So this change is caused due to the greenhouse gases, aerosol concentration and radioactive forces or climate change, climate forcing. So it's very simple. When sun rays, these are coming to the Earth's surface, we have certain greenhouse gases in atmosphere, so these will obviously tend to change on net radiation whatever is received by the Earth's surface. Okay, next concept is global warming potential. So this global warming potential, what it is? So it is the relative measure of how much heat a greenhouse gas traps in atmosphere. It compares the amount of heat trapped by certain mass of gas in a question to amount of heat trapped by similar mass of carbon dioxide. So it is just in comparison of heat which is trapped in atmosphere by certain gases. For example, how much gas this carbon dioxide trap, how much gas this methane trap, how much gas ethane trap, and aerosol. So how much these gases have potential to trap the sunlight, or you can say the heat energy of sun, that would be called as global warming potential. Now this global warming potential would be depend on certain factors, and like the absorption of infrared radiation by a given species, the spectral location of the absorbing wavelength, atmospheric lifetime of the species. So it's not only the gases which absorb the sunlight, there are certain species present on the Earth's surface or in water body which are responsible for absorption or radiation of this sunlight. Okay. Next is causes of climate change. So we have already learned about the factors which are responsible, but there are certain causes like man-made as well as natural, you can say. So we'll learn the major causes like extraterrestrial sources, terrestrial sources and anthropogenic sources. So these are the sources which are responsible or causes for climate change. So starting with extraterrestrial sources of climate change. What are these extraterrestrial? Terrestrial means the planetary body. Like we have Earth, Mars, Jupiter and other planets, Sun. These are terrestrial bodies. We have Moon and asteroid, meteoroid. So these are terrestrial bodies. So because of movement of these terrestrial bodies, there could be possibility of climate change. So first example over here given is about interstellar nebula. So we've already studied about nebula concept or nebula hypothesis of formation of universe in geography first unit. If you haven't seen that, please go and watch that video. You'll understand what actually nebula was and what is the hypothesis behind the formation of universe. So actually nebula is a kind of cloud of gases. Okay, so whenever our Earth's surface or the Earth passes through these nebulas, what will happen? And like example, if we draw a diagram over here. So this is Earth, and Earth moves along an elliptical path, we know this very well. And here there is a sun and nebula clouds. If they tends to reach over here somewhere between Earth and Sun, what will these nebula clouds do, or nebula interstellar will do? These nebula interstellar will not permit that amount of sun energy or sunlight reach the Earth's surface as it used to be earlier. And because of this, what will happen? Ultimately there would be reduce in temperature, and that will also tend to change in global or climate change. See, climate change doesn't only means global warming or increase in temperature. There could be possibility that there is decrease in temperature also. There is another concept which you might be not aware of, global dimming. Global dimming is just opposite of global warming. We have much studied about global warming, that increase in temperature, but contrast to it, opposite term is global dimming, that means reduction in climate change or temperature on the Earth's surface. Fine. Next is solar irradiance. Now solar irradiance is regular fluctuation in the amount of energy irradiated from outer surface of the sun or the photosphere. Okay, and whenever there would be change in solar radiation, there would be change in climate change also. Now sunspot cycle. So these are what are sunspots. Sunspot, what happens? So whenever there is Earth's surface, so there are sometime increase in temperature at some point. Whenever there is increase in some point, the temperature will increase over here, but the temperature at the surface will reduce. When temperature at the surface of Earth will reduce, it will tend to emit less solar radiation as it used to be normal conditions. So this will also change to tend in change of climate change. Fine. Next is extraterrestrial body collision. So whenever there is extra body collision like meteors, comet, etc., near Earth's surface will again tends to reduce the climate change or reduce the temperature, that will ultimately lead to climate change. Next is terrestrial source of climate change. So now what are the terrestrial source? Terrestrial means the body present on the Earth's surface, or at smaller level you can say. Extraterrestrial was in huge level or the bigger number or bigger size you can say. So terrestrial, we have the example of atmospheric dust particles, salt particles, pollen, small. So these, whenever these would be, the concentration of these particles would be more in atmosphere, there would be ultimately reduction in temperature, as they will not permit or allow the sunlight to reach the Earth's surface. Next is solar albedo. So what is the solar albedo? So solar albedo is the ratio between the temperature or the sunlight, whichever, when they strike the Earth's surface and when they move out or when they are reflected back from the Earth's surface. So the ratio between the incident and the reflected solar radiation is called as solar albedo. Okay. And there are certain factors which are responsible for solar albedo, like geographical and surface characteristic, composition of atmosphere, position of sun, angular and wavelength of incident solar layer. So these are the factors which are responsible for changing solar albedo. Why these are responsible? So if we understand by simple means, geographical surface. So for example, if somewhere there is hilly region, somewhere it is plain, somewhere it is plateau region, so the time taken to or the time which sun takes to reach the surface would be lesser as compared to reach this surface. So that's why there would be change in albedo of Earth's surface or solar albedo. Fine. Next is continental drift or polar wandering. So continental drift means, we have already studied in geography that there are certain plates, tectonic plates, which are at the bottom of oceans as well as continental plates. So whenever they tend to move, they will change the position of the surface, and that will ultimately tends to change the climate change. Fine. Next is oceanic variation. So it's same as continental drift. Next point is anthropogenic source of climate. So anthropogenic source means the man-made. What are the man-made possibilities that tend to change the climate? So these are combustion of fossil fuels. So we are using lots of fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, petroleum. So whenever these fuels are burned, these emit lots of gases in atmosphere, which increases the temperature of Earth. Clearing of forest, again, when forests would be cleared, there would be disturbance in atmosphere, like carbon dioxide emission would be increased, and lots of other factors would be there, and other reasons are deforestation. So these are the same as in case of clearing of forest for agriculture. So this will also tends to change in climate. Okay. Next is the impact of climate change. So what will be the impact? So again, impact would be very common. This is also very much known to you, but still I'll just quickly revise it. Like impact on biodiversity. What is biodiversity? We have been learning biodiversity since first video. Biodiversity means simply the type of species. Like there are certain species of plants and animals residing on the Earth's surface, under the water, or wherever the biosphere is present. So these biodiversity is nothing but the species or the living organism which are living in the biosphere. So there would be change in biosphere or biodiversity. Why? Because there are certain species which require special amount of temperature, pressure, and certain conditions are required for them to survive. We human, although we are adaptable in nature, but still if the conditions are changed at extreme level. For example, if you are living somewhere in Rajasthan in very hot area, and if you are being taken to Russia or Siberian place where the temperature goes beyond minus 30 degrees Celsius, so you will have difficulty in surviving over there. Similarly, there are certain species which are not able to survive. They will just become die, or they will just become extinct. So this is impact of biodiversity, impact of climate change on biodiversity. Next is impact on agriculture. So due to climate change, there would be change in rainfall, precipitation, which we have already seen. So as we know, agriculture in our country and whereas other countries also, it's mostly dependent on rainfall. And whenever there would be change in rainfall pattern, or the amount of rainfall will reduce or increase, there would be effect to agriculture. Okay, so this is the major impact of global warming on agriculture. Next is impact on fisheries and aquaculture. So fisheries and aquaculture simply means whenever there would be drainage of water, lots of water would be drained in oceans, or you can say there would be lots of movement in oceans and rivers. So that would affect the aquatic life, like fish won't be able to stay there, or there would be reduction in species of fishes which are available for fishing of fishers. So this will impact the aquatic life. Next is impact on agriculture. Next is impact on demography. Demography means the population, how population tends to shift. So this I've already told. For example, ice caps are melting, or you can say glaciers are melting, and this will ultimately tends to increase the sea level. There would be rise in sea level, and when there will be rise in sea level, the coastal area, people residing in coastal area would have to move inland, or you can say towards the center or towards the land area. So this will obviously change tends to migration of demography or population residing in the coastal areas. Impact on glaciers. So glaciers would start melting as temperature would increase, and if the global warming, what is the rate of global warming what we have right now, if this continues, so it is tending to melt the Himalayan glaciers in 25 years only. That means in 25 years all the glaciers which are present in Himalayan region would melt, and this will adversely affect the Indo-Gangetic plain. Why it will affect? Because it would increase at some time. For example, initially the water level will increase, there would be flood condition, and later on what will happen, when there would be no glacier present in Himalayan region, this Indo-Gangetic plain or these Ganga river, Yamuna river, or whatever rivers are flowing in this region would become seasonal. Although these are perennial at moment. Perennial means the rivers which flow throughout the year, because the ocean, the glacier keeps on melting and water is fed into these rivers. But once these glaciers are dried or these are melted, there would be no source of water for these rivers, and they will become seasonal. And once they have become seasonal, lots of agricultural land, lots of problem would be there. Next is impact on weather. So how weather will change. So as there would be change in precipitation, temperature will increase or decrease, pressure will change. So that will ultimately do change in temperature also. Next is impact on human we have already seen. So all over the factors which are there on the biodiversity, that would be same with the human also, like human health. If global warming keeps on increasing, the ozone is depleting, and once ozone is depleting, we'll have lots of problem with our skin. Another problem, our lifestyle will be degraded, and if temperature keeps on increasing, more and more people will start using air conditions, and air conditions have very adverse effect, like they have adverse effect to environment. So everything is interconnected. See, everything is interconnected. So once there is problem in one area, this will tend to change problem in other areas also, and this will keep on increasing. Impact on water resources, so these are already discussed. Sea level will rise, threats to cities, how cities will be affected. So whenever there would be lots of precipitation in cities, if cities won't have proper infrastructure or drainage system, they will have problems. Lakhs of people would become, we don't have habitat, so they won't have proper fooding. Population migration would be there. So these points are already discussed earlier, so that's why I'm not going in detail over here. Now the last thing which we need to discuss over here is those steps taken by government for mitigation of these issues of climate change. So what are these? Just a minute. So the steps which are taken by government for mitigation are, so this is India's Energy Conservation Act. So this act is represented by India, and it was brought in act into 2010, which was amended of the Energy Conservation Act, created PAT scheme and market-based trading system, which enables the industries to meet the mandatory energy efficiency standard. That means the energy which we are over-exploiting, the energy, the natural resources like coal, natural gas, petroleum, we are over-exploiting this, and whenever we are over-exploiting these, lots of emissions are there in atmosphere which are tending to change the climate. Next is use of renewable energy. So government are just facilitating us to use more and more renewable energy, like solar energy, hydropower plants. So lots of renewable energy are there. Electric vehicles, now you can see there has lots of subsidies are also being given on electrical vehicle also. Next is climate friendly transport sector. For example, now you should use public transport. Now new stages of vehicles are coming, like Bharat stage, BS4, BS3, BS2. So earlier it was BS2, BS3. Now recently we have got BS4, and it will keep on increasing, that the emission of carbon could be reduced up to certain level. Next is conservation of agriculture, forest and water resources. So these conservation of these things are also very important, as we have already seen that whenever there would be disturbance in the forest and water resources, there would be change in climate also. Forestry sector also needs to be taken care, like national forestry policy is also there, so that deforestation could be managed and controlled. Coastal area, so we have already seen how this coastal area impacts, so these also has to be taken care, and adaptive capacity has to be also taken care. So that's all. I think it ends the video, and I hope you have understood everything about the climate change. But still, if you feel any doubt or if you haven't understood anything about this, please write down in the comment box. I'll try to answer your questions in the next video. Thank you for watching. See you in next video. Till then, goodbye. Arun, बुला ले आरुषि के.